Hello and welcome to Spinster's Library. I'm Claudia and today I'm reviewing The Pursuit of Love by Nancy Mitford. This is quite a short novel. It's only about 250 pages that was published in 1945, and it is essentially the story of a young girl and later young woman named Linda Radlett. She is one of many children of an aristocratic family who grew up with their eccentric parents on their country estate, and the story details her, as the title says, her search for love and for romance. One of the things that's quite unique about this book is the point of view, because the entire story of Linda is narrated in first person by her cousin Fanny. So we get Linda's life story through Fanny's eyes, and that adds a layer of sort of distance to the main character that makes us see her in a certain way through Fanny's eyes. Now, Fanny and Linda are best friends and they spend a lot of time together. As children, they spend a lot of time together because Fanny spends her holidays with Linda's family at the Radlett estate, which is called Alconley, I believe. And then later, when they grow up to become young women, they see each other regularly and catch up. This point of view thing is interesting. I'm not entirely sure what I made of it, because in some parts it works really well in that it shows us Linda through the eyes of someone who both admires her but also criticizes her and has a complex opinion of her friend. However, it doesn't work in some ways when, for example, the narration turns to events that Fanny didn't witness. For example, there is a whole section of the book that's set in France, where Linda goes to France for various things and Fanny remains in England. And so when Fanny recounts these events, we only know about them through Linda's narration of them. So Linda told Fanny that this is what happened in France, and then Fanny writes it in this book. That's when that particular style doesn't quite work and it gets a little clumsy, but for the most part, it's an interesting way to tell a story. What I loved most about this book was the characters. So the main character of Linda is, very fascinating, but she's a very typical protagonist, I would say, for those kinds of high society novels. She is very strong-willed and very romantic and not as reserved as her parents and those around her would like her to be. And she rebels in many ways against her family and against her family's traditions. She's an interesting character, but not super unique. However, she's surrounded by some really fun side characters that somehow, even in this very short book, get given enough space to really express their personalities and make them just really lovable additions to this story. There are, for example, Linda's brothers and sisters, like young Jazzy, who has a running away fund even as a child, where she very openly and publicly saves up money to run away. And then later in the book, we see what actually happened to her, if she's successful at that or not. Then there's Davy, who is both the main characters and the narrator's aunt's new husband, who is a intellectual, a critic, a man of the world, but also someone who has very weird obsessions with foods and with the diets he eats, that he is willing to tweak if something particularly delicious ends up on his plate. He is someone who feels like a modern character in the way that he thinks not just about food but about health and bodies. He has all of these outrageous ideas about what's good for you and what's not good for you, and is quite liberal with bestowing his opinion on others, but somehow he's still really fun and really lovable. There's the eccentric Lord Merlin, who's the Radlett's neighbour, who puts diamond necklaces on his dogs and who's the only one in this entire story who knows how to party. There's just so many characters that come in and out of the narrative that feel so well written and so well rounded. It's just a joy to see them when they pop up on the page. Some other interesting characters that feel a lot more like ideas than actual fleshed out characters are Linda's various love interests. I don't think it's much of a spoiler to tell you that the pursuit of love does not start and end with the one true love that she finds right at the beginning and is happy with throughout the book. No, this is a search. You know, she's looking for the one, and along the way she finds all sorts of different men who she gets involved with. There is, for example, the banker's son, and not just any banker's son. He is the son of the governor of the Bank of England, so like the head banker's son, whom Linda's parents absolutely detest. Why? He's rich, but he's nouveau riche. He is not part of the aristocratic class. He has a German surname, and he works. That's not something you do. Work to make money. Not that his parents don't have enough money already, but, you know, they are bankers. They exemplify the archetype of the banker. He, pretty early on, enters a Conservative safe seat and is a member of the House of Commons. And everyone around Linda is absolutely horrified by this match. Her parents, because he has a German surname and he is a banker, and not an old English aristocrat. And from that character on, you kind of get the feeling that Linda's love interests are more ideas than actual characters. They symbolize certain types of society, certain parts of society. There's, for example, the young communist who works really hard to make the world a better place, but who doesn't really care for one person enough, for example, for Linda, to really be a good man to be in a relationship with. There's a French aristocrat who is much more aligned with Linda in terms of status, and you can tell that basically these men exist to show different types of society and how different types of society match or don't match. This book is told over a series of years, starting in Linda and Fanny's childhood and going up into their adulthood. And some of those years cover the Second World War. Especially in the second half of the book, the war plays a really big part in it, in how it affects these characters and pretty much everything they do. The men get drafted, the women have to somehow, these aristocratic women who are used to all of the luxuries in the world somehow have to make do with less. This was published in 1945, so I can imagine that this was written over the course of the preceding few years, and the author herself would have been in that situation. So you can really tell how the war permeates the narrative at this point. The book itself, again, it's such a short amount of time, covers a sort of family comedy, romance, drama, and satire. And the satire kind of overlays everything. Everything is turned funny by it. The characters are quite over the top, and the narration as well, and the events that happen. It really is a comedy with a dark and a very sad edge to it. And I really enjoyed that mix. It's a very specifically British style of storytelling, I feel, where you have so much distance to the events of the book that even when they are tragic and sad, and when Linda doesn't find the one right away, it is narrated with that sort of distance, with that step back, that kind of makes it funny. And what the author did in this case, by having that different point of view narration to the protagonist, is amplify that satire, that distance. There's a lot of nuance in this book in terms of the societal tensions, I suppose, that I'm not sure how much you would get if you're not at least somewhat familiar with Britain and with the way class kind of sets the tone for how you deal with people. For example, at some point, Linda gets married to the young conservative banker, and Fanny gets married to an academic. And both of those matches are presented as not quite being what was expected of these young aristocratic women. So Fanny's husband is an academic at Oxford, and while you'd think, well, that sounds like the top of the food chain, it actually isn't, because he has a job, he works, he's not an aristocrat, and therefore it's sort of seen as a mildly disappointing choice for this particular character to make. So there's a lot of that sort of tension in this book that's not really spelled out like that, but that is only really understood within the context of the very rigid class structure of the UK at the time, and a lot of those structures are obviously still remaining today. Overall, I did quite enjoy this book. It's not the sort of book that will stay with me a long time. You know, I don't think about it after reading it. It's fun and it's unique in a lot of ways, and it's incredibly entertaining. Nancy Mitford wrote 2 more novels that are sort of set in that same universe with, I believe, some of the same characters and some of the same events. I'm not entirely sure if they are sequels or spin-offs, but I'm certain to read more of her writing. I really enjoyed the writing style. If you're into that sort of mid-century high society narrative, or even earlier examples, you know, like Jane Austen or Ian Forster or whatever, that deal with basically just rich people problems, then I think you'll get a lot out of this novel as well. Let me know if you've read it and if you enjoyed it, and let me know if you'd recommend reading the other books that are set in this universe too. Thank you for watching. Bye!